Don't get me wrong, oh babe, you won't get me. I hope I make myself clear. The heat is on, you'll lose it, you bet me. But I believe you're sincere. The gig is up, now nothing can help you. The truth is gonna come out. I interrupt your usual intro. That is fair play and turnabout. Watch out, this is a shakedown. Stand it to the takedown. Hollywood's a fake down. Give me a break. This is it, the showdown. Tell me what's the lowdown. Be there for the shakedown or be scared.
The following is a paid program and does not necessarily express the views or opinions of Equity Media, its management, staff, or affiliates of WBOK.
Now, it's the Monitor's Mic with your host, Stella Cement.
Welcome to the Monitor's Mic, where we talk oversight, policing, and you. Sorry about that. We're getting situated. Welcome to the Monitor's Mic, where we talk oversight, policing, and you. I'm Stella Cement, your host and the independent police monitor for the city of New Orleans, and with me is Chriselle Williams, our deputy police monitor. This show is your go-to source for discussing policing, law enforcement oversight, and how it all impacts you. From the Office of the Independent Police Monitor, we offer an independent perspective on city government. The Office of the Independent Police Monitor, OIPM, serves as a crucial civilian oversight body for the New Orleans Police Department. We ensure transparency and accountability within the police department by making sure that NOPD follows their policies and is compliant with all local, state, and federal laws. We, your hosts, are not police officers, but we are experienced attorneys from the criminal legal field, dedicated to transparency and accountability. Our office operates independently from the NOPD. What do we do day to day? We take complaints of officer misconduct from the public and from police officers. We review misconduct investigations conducted by the NOPD's Internal Affairs, which is called the Public Integrity Bureau. We're on call 24 hours a day, every day of the year, for officer-involved shootings and critical incidents, and we'll go to the scene and monitor the force investigation from start to finish. We're advisory members of the Use of Force Review Board in the disciplinary hearings. We run the Community Police Mediation Program, and we engage the community to ensure your voice, opinions, and concerns are heard. This summer in 2025, the OIPM launched a 24-hour hotline for complaints of officer misconduct or accounts of positive policing. It's operational every day of the year. This hotline is available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. You have the option to file anonymously through that platform, and you will be given a unique tracking number. You can reach the hotline through calling or texting 1-877-225-OIPM. Again, that's 1-877-225-OIPM, which is 6476. For our show today, we encourage you to call in with your questions, comments, and concerns. You can reach us on the air at 504-582-9422. While we may not be able to address individual cases, we are committed to following up with you. So with all that, let's hear from Chriselle as she introduces our guest today.
Today we are joined by Jason P. Armstrong. Jason P. Armstrong is a nationally recognized leader in police reform, accountability, and community-centered public safety. He is a veteran law enforcement executive and has served as chief of police in Ferguson, Missouri, Apex, North Carolina, and agencies in Georgia, guiding departments through some of the most challenging and transformative periods in modern policing. Armstrong gained national attention when he was appointed chief in Ferguson 5 years after the killing of Michael Brown Jr., where he partnered with the Department of Justice, federal monitors, and community stakeholders to implement the city's sweeping consent decree reforms. His leadership emphasized transparency, culture change, and rebuilding community trust in a department with a deeply painful history. Armstrong's influence extends far beyond the departments he has led. He is a consultant, speaker, and reform advisor for public safety organizations across the country, known for his work in organizational transformation, equity, and accountability. His professional recognitions include induction into the National Law Enforcement Officer Hall of Fame, selection as an IACP 40 under 40 honoree, and participation in the Obama Foundation's USA Leaders Program. Now retired from active policing, Chief Armstrong continues to support cities, agencies, and communities seeking meaningful, people-centered police transformation. Thank you so much for joining us, Chief Armstrong.
Thank you. We really appreciate having you on the show today.
No, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So you famously became the chief of the police department in Ferguson, Missouri, while Ferguson was still reeling from the killing of Michael Brown, a black man, by a white officer. This killing resulted in weeks of protests against the police and national attention on the police department, including the introduction of the Department of Justice and an eventual consent decree. So we would love to start this show by having you explain to our listeners what the city and the police department was like and getting some context to the gravity of your decision to take over as police chief.
Sure. To speak to what the department and what the community was like when I got there. So I arrived 1 month before the 5-year anniversary.
Wow.
So day one, it was all hands on deck as we were planning and preparing for the 5-year anniversary, knowing that it was going to bring a lot of people to the city, a lot of cameras to the city. So I had to start very quickly on the ground, just getting out in the community and trying to meet people and trying to get as quickly as I could an understanding of what was going on and how people were not only feeling, but how they were viewing the police department and the work that had been done up until that point, because we were 5 years later. And so I knew some things had been done and some changes had been made, but I didn't know until I got there and started, interacting with people in the community, just really how they were feeling. And I would say the number one response that I got from people is that it was a community that was still trying to heal. Mm-hmm. And at the 5-year anniversary mark, with there being so many people and so many entities coming back into Ferguson, especially the media, that was a trigger for a lot of people. I remember talking to an older woman one day, and she talked about how she felt largely the country and media-driven just had left them to almost suffer on their own, because she talked about in 2014, when everything first kicked off and all of these people are down there and they're showing all of this interest in wanting to hear their stories and hear how they were impacted by things. But then once, that news cycle kind of dried up, then everybody left and they never heard from anybody again. And Wow. It felt like nobody cared or paid attention to the community. But now 5 years later, because this is such a hallmark anniversary, now all these people are coming back 5 years later wanting to have a conversation and all of those things. And that didn't sit well with a lot of people. Coming into the department, one thing that I knew that was prevalent was the traction and the progress that was being made on the consent decree specifically. And going through the process and everything that I looked at leading up to it, I knew that the department wasn't meeting the expectations of the monitor and the DOJ and the federal judge with how implementation was going, and really going through that process. That was at the top of the list as far as what I needed to focus on and what we needed to make sure that we were putting a lot of effort and energy behind, was how do we start getting some traction and start moving on consent decree implementation, because it was moving a lot slower than everybody was hoping that it would move. And so getting there, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to jump in. Do you think that was the biggest challenge that you were facing as the new chief of Ferguson? This lack of progress on the consent decree, or the community's feeling on the police? I mean, it just feels like you're listing like a lot of obstacles. How were you handling all of this?
I had way more challenges than just that. I was moving my family to a place that we really didn't know anybody, and we had no history there. I was coming into a community that I didn't know, and they didn't know me. And so there's just a lot that has to be done in that time. But you also have to approach it from understanding that none of this is going to get done overnight. And so day in and day out, my focus is, how much could I chip away at this today? And what are the things that are top of mind today that I can work on, and just really start trying to break it down in a way where you don't overwhelm yourself, because it's very easy as a new police chief coming in to want to be everything for everybody immediately right away. And what you find is that is not sustainable at all. And that's really where having, people in your corner and in your circle to help you try to stay as balanced as you can stay in that space is really critical. To where I remember there were nights where I'm at the PD and it may be 9, 10 o'clock at night early on. And I've been there since 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning, where I had officers telling me, like, Chief, all of this stuff is going to be here tomorrow. Like, dude, man, you can't do this. You can't do this every day. Like, go home. You're not going to fix the world's problems in the next hour or two.
Right.
Go home and recharge. And those are the things, that are really key starting out, because the challenges are enormous. And if you just sit and just focus just solely on just looking at how challenging it is, then it's going to be harder for you to get traction on things. And so you really have to break it down and just really look at day to day. And that was really how I processed it. Is what can I do today, and what impact can I have today? And I worry about tomorrow at the end of today, but, really, really getting through today. But yeah, being a new chief coming in and having to learn the community, having to learn the department, that's always a big challenge for an outside chief coming into a new organization.
And I'm sorry.
No, go.
No. I just wanted to ask Chief Armstrong, because you mentioned, that you were not from Ferguson, and this was actually a very difficult time to actually be a chief in that moment, and moving your family there to a place that you had no roots in, that you were not from. I have to ask, why did you want to be the chief of Ferguson?
Yeah,
during that time? Why did you take this on?
So the first answer to that is, it wasn't specific that I wanted to be the chief in Ferguson. What I would tell you is the agency that I was in Georgia, I knew my time there had come to an end, and it was time for me to move on to the next opportunity, largely because I had been robbed of an opportunity to be the police chief at that organization that I started in. So I know I needed to leave. So I was just looking for an opportunity, largely because I had been robbed of an opportunity down there. And so when I'm looking at opportunities around the country and being realistic with myself about the experience that I had up until that point, what communities or environments that I feel as though that I could contribute. When I saw the posting in Ferguson, of course, everybody knows Ferguson, and I knew a great deal about what was reported on in the DOJ report, and of course what I saw on the media and social media in the aftermath of Mike Brown's death. But when I researched the community, what gave me the confidence that I could go there and have the potential to be successful is because the community was almost identical to the community that I was in Georgia.
How so?
The population was the same size. The demographics were very, very similar. Even down to the point of what I was looking at, like how the city was situated, where there wasn't a main highway that went through the city, but the city was wedged in between like two main highway thoroughfares in the greater metro area. Where the city was situated, how far it was from downtown metro area, because I was in Metro Atlanta in Georgia. And so just understanding, like, we bordered Atlanta, the agency that I was with. And so knowing the dynamics of big city issues and problems and how they impact smaller communities that are right next door and what that looks like. I had navigated all of those things throughout my career. When I looked at the crime rate in both cities, like everything lined up and was a match. And that's really what I looked at and what I analyzed to even just have the thought process that I know it's Ferguson. And I know that this is going to be like any other place in the country that you can go be a police chief. But this community is not defined solely by August 9th, 2014.
Right.
Like there is a whole lot that exists in this community. And when I look at all of the other stuff outside of that one day, I feel as though that I'm equipped to handle and navigate those things because of what my career had been up until that point in the community that I had done the work. I mean, they were almost spitting images of one another. And that was the real thing. And so I was starving for an opportunity. And it just so happened that opportunity came from Ferguson.
That makes so much sense. And it's really interesting to hear that analysis. And I have to say, I love the way you break issues down. We were talking before we went on air. And the way that you look at problems and kind of break them down is very methodical and thoughtful. And this is something I'm definitely going to want to return to. But first, I'm just curious, what do you think are the most important leadership traits or qualities to have during a period of the magnitude of post-killing of Mike Brown, but also to take over a police department? What do you think are the traits that a potential police chief should have?
The number one trait I would say is confidence. Like you have to have the ultimate confidence in yourself to manage to navigate all of the obstacles and the barriers that you are about to face. Like if you don't go into it thinking that you can do it and accomplish it and be successful in it, you're going to have a very hard time surviving it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be that difficult. Confidence is number one. Number two is you have to be doing it for the right reasons.
Talk to us about that.
So, clearly the number one question I get asked around the country is why in the world would you take the chief job in Ferguson? Like of all places. Like I remember when I got there, one of the national news outlets I did an interview with, the reporter said, "Man, this is the worst chief job in the country. Like, why would you sign up for this?" And some people even ask, like, were you trying to make a name for yourself? Like, did you want to be in the limelight and have this? And like I just said, my motivator was I wanted an opportunity because I had been robbed of one. And so I really didn't care who was going to give me that opportunity. I was starving for the opportunity and the chance to just show what I could do as a leader. So when I say you have to be doing it for the right reasons, like you can't be doing it and just, looking at it as, all right, this is a resume builder, or this is going to put me in a national spotlight, so I'll be on TV a lot, and I'm trying to build this persona or all these other things. It has to be about doing the work. And that was something that I was very confident in, because that's up until that point in my career, that's what had led to the success that I had. And for me, what was full circle is what happened in Ferguson in 2014 was a huge catalyst for the success that I had in my career in Georgia.
Talk to us about that. What do you mean?
Because when I saw what happened, up until that point, that was the most pivotal, critical incident that I had seen nationally as my time in the profession. And I was a captain, so I was a commander at that point in my career at the agency that I was in. Now, what is an interesting note about this? So the agency that I started in, when I got there, sergeant was the highest position a Black person had ever held in that department.
Wow.
And this is in Metro Atlanta. So when I made lieutenant in 2011, I believe, I was the first Black lieutenant we ever had, then became the first Black captain, and all the way up to it. I was an interim major. I was the interim police chief of that department. But I was a captain in 2014 when Mike Brown was killed. And just seeing everything unfold in Ferguson, like I paid attention to that unlike anything I had looked at and studied before that moment happened. So much so that when the DOJ report came out, when the investigation came out, I read it. And I had never read anything like this before in my career up until that point. But I read that entire report, and I remember reading it and just seeing how similar Ferguson was to Forest Park. And I remember thinking to myself, like, there are a lot of similarities to the size and the communities and all that stuff that I've already noted. But then when I'm reading some of the quotes that are in the report and things that community members are saying about the department, those are the same things that I was hearing out in the community, in my community in Georgia.
Yeah.
And then when I looked around, looking at the demographic of the community that we serve, which it was over 70% minority was the community that I served in Georgia. And I was the only minority on our command staff at that time. And I was the first ever and still the only at that time. And so when I looked around, I just felt as though like the responsibility was mine, because the bulk of the issues, especially the things that were highlighted in the Ferguson report, surrounded the minority community by and large. And when I looked at who was best situated to try to connect and build bridges and relationships in that community, it was me.
Yeah.
And so when I looked around, like, I own this. I hold this responsibility. And that's really what got me kickstarted and really looking at and understanding what needs to take place between police departments and communities, especially communities where relationships historically are fractured or just aren't good. And so everything that I did in Georgia helped prepare me for me going to Ferguson, because Ferguson really was the foundation of what I did in Georgia. And so, the success that I was able to have down there, just really being out in the community and doing that, like, that was part of what I looked at with this opportunity. And so all of that goes into the bucket of when I say, like, you have to be doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
Like, it wasn't just me looking at this, just thinking, okay, I'm Jason Armstrong, I can do anything, let me just go in here and do it. It was built on the work that I had been doing for years in a similarly situated community that I felt, all right, I had success here. Now, I know I'm going into the lion's den with this position, but if I really approach it from a community focus and not going in there and looking at the community as if there's something wrong with them because they experience what they experience in that environment and from that situation, then I should be able to make inroads. I should be able to build relationships and connections with people in the community that can come alongside the police department and help us make progress in all of the areas that we needed to make progress. I help us understand, what this looks like as a community effort and how we can make the progress that I think all of us want to see, where it's just having a safer community at the end of the day.
So you've said so much. I want to go into this idea of you need to be ready to do the work. And you've described already a lot of the aspects of what doing the work in Ferguson entails. But can you talk to us about how doing the work that needed to get done, how that coincided or meshed with the consent decree that y'all were under? Can you describe that consent decree?
It was tough. It was the hardest thing that I've ever had to try to manage and navigate and balance out in my career, because when you're under a consent decree, now, every consent decree has the primary issues that it's trying to address and things. But when you look at what I call the high-profile consent decrees,
Yeah.
Ferguson, Baltimore, post, Freddie Gray, Chicago, Laquan McDonald, like the nuts and bolts of it are very similar. It's going to be use of force issues that are spelled out in there, accountability, misconduct. A lot of those things are going to be consistent in them. And so all of that is really focused on addressing culture inside the organization.
What do you mean by that?
Like those issues. So making sure that your use of force policies and how you hold yourself accountable, like that's to the culture of the organization. Because when you look at a patterns or practice investigation, they're not looking at a policy. They're looking at what do you all do? Like the individuals that work here, like how do you all show up and what do you all do? That's culture of an organization. If you curse everybody out that you come into contact with, there's not a policy that says curse everybody out.
Right.
Your culture establishes we curse everybody out here,
Right.
or your culture establishes the mindset that, man, people that live in that neighborhood over there, they only respond to curse words, or they only respond to this and to that and some of the things that we see. And a consent decree is largely formatted to address a lot of those issues. Consent decrees typically, historically, are not crime-fighting tools.
I'm so happy
They
you
address
said that.
people and culture and people issues. They're not crime-fighting tools. But as a police chief, I'm responsible for every ounce of public safety in this community. And so when I have people getting killed, when I have people getting robbed, when I have people that don't feel safe, and I have a community that's coming and they're yelling and they're screaming at me, your officers aren't doing enough enforcement. And this happened in Ferguson. The bulk of the times when I got cursed out by community members, when I would go to community meetings, it wasn't because an officer spoke ill to them or mistreated them. It was because they weren't seeing enough from us of what they wanted to see. And they saw crime and they saw quality of life issues going on in their neighborhoods and their communities. And they didn't feel as though that we were doing enough to address those things because we're so focused on the consent decree and what the document is telling us we have to fix and we have to change. And as the chief, I own all of that. I own all segments of that. And that was a challenge where I have the DOJ wanting to schedule this meeting to talk about this policy. Just pick any policy where when I look at the history, in 3 years, this policy would have been applied 2 times. But I got to spend 7, 8, 9 months going back and forth on policy language. But in that same 8 or 9 months, I've had 3 or 4 teenagers or young people murdered in my city.
Yes.
And I got to do something to address that.
Yes.
And consent decree work and implementation largely, wasn't focused on addressing those things. And that's where I say, like, that was the hardest thing is other issues come up when you're under a consent decree, but you're mandated. And the federal judge, those status hearings, those 3 months go by really fast before you're going back into court. And now you got to show all of the stuff. And it doesn't matter what else has come on your plate during those 3 months, or how many murders you've had, or what other critical things that you've had to navigate or deal with. You better have made some progress on this consent decree when you're walking in here, or it's not going to go good for you. So balancing all of those things, it's extremely tough and difficult, especially when you don't have adequate resources to address everything that you're navigating and dealing with.
You have described this so beautifully. I think the challenges that we have seen across the country with consent decrees, with how you balance out both the things that are happening today, the priorities of the community that you need to serve today as a police chief, and then this totally different audience and this totally different need of the legal language of this contractual document that you're bound by, and pleasing ultimately the Department of Justice and your judge and your federal monitors. And in a perfect world, all of these things would be aligned,
But
right?
they're not.
But they're not always. They're not always. And you're right. It does take months sometimes to get policy language approved, to be able to produce the reports and the data that you need to be able to produce. You're talking about trying to please very different audiences who have very different priorities and values. That is hard.
And try doing it at a small department.
Yes.
Because what the world, a lot of people in the country don't realize is Ferguson is a small community and a very small police department.
How small?
And so the police department, when I was there, we were authorized for like 45 police officers.
45?
That's it. It's a small community.
45?
45.
Wow.
Yes. And we had, and that was what we were authorized for. We only had 30 something.
Oh.
My consent decree team consisted of one person, Nicole Barton. I'm sure you all know her.
Yes, we do.
She was my consent decree coordinator. Now, when I would talk to my counterparts in Baltimore or New Orleans, their consent decree teams are 15, 20, 25 people that their full-time job is some component of working on the consent decree.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see, New Orleans consent decree, if my math serves me right, was about 495 paragraphs, give or take one or two.
Yes.
Baltimore's was 513. I've read all of these documents.
Yeah.
My consent decree in Ferguson was 467, 68 paragraphs. So my consent decree was the same size as Baltimore's in New Orleans, and I had one person. So just think about this. So when the DOJ wants to have a meeting, and the people from my team that have a meeting, those are the same people that when we have a shooting or a homicide, we're all running out of the building to go to that scene because we have to manage that scene also.
Oh my gosh.
And so we had to do all of it. And that's, like I said, I don't wish that on anybody.
That is fair.
And
I have to know, how did you get buy-in from your police department in this process?
When you are managing something that you are forced to do, and even think about it, not just from like a police or a consent decree lens, just look at it from a human nature lens. 9 times out of 10, when we are forced to do something, there's an automatic resistance that comes up to it.
Right.
We all know April 15th, our taxes are due. We are all resistant to doing our taxes. And, so with a consent decree, for the agency that's under the consent decree, there's just a natural resistance to it. What is key is, as you're navigating doing that work, the things that you're doing, the things that you're implementing, you can't make it about the consent decree. You have to make it about, why is this beneficial for the community and why is this beneficial for the department?
And
to hell with the consent decree.
I love those words. I'm so sorry. We're going to jump in because we have a caller.
Okay.
Oh, am I on?
Yes.
Yeah.
You are on. You're on the monitors, Mike.
Yeah, I just caught what y'all was talking about with the consent decree. What is so frustrating to me is that we don't problem solve with things like consent decrees, like we problem solve with our goals and aspirations in life. My thing is this: okay, the police department are members of the community.
Yes.
Okay, so my thing is, once I have a problem in my own life, I make sure I find out, I analyze, what did I do that caused the problem? What can I have done, or what can I do in the future to avoid revisiting this problem? We're talking about Ferguson as though all this stuff, and I'm not indicting you guys at all. I'm just thinking about problem solving. But we're talking about that in the sense that we're not talking about what was the dynamics of the community, that the culture of the community that led to this negative consequence. And because the police officers are members of the community, and I see this a lot where I'm here in New Orleans too, we don't engage the community, and the community we aren't working as a team. on a good day before these negative events happen. And if we did that, that would actually nullify the events a lot of times from happening in the first place. If I engage my family and respect their needs and my family respect my attempts to try to work together as a team, we tend to not end up in hostile engagement with each other. So the expense, we can avoid all kind of expenses and make the work not so hostile for the police department if we act like we need each other to address these issues that come up in the community. That should happen long before it gets to the problem point of consent decrees. And that's what people were frustrated about, because they didn't see that before it got to that point in the first place.
You just said so much. And I mean, I want Chief Armstrong to get to respond, but I will say that, like, here in New Orleans, we always say that the community is not your obstacle to solving crime. Mm-hmm. It's not your obstacle to policing. It's actually your greatest asset to your policing. And what you just said, that we all need to be on the same team, I couldn't agree more. But Chief Armstrong, is there anything you want to add to what this caller has brought to our attention?
Yes, he hit the nail right on the head. And as I travel the country now, that is the number one topic that I get brought in to speak about. I have a framework that I use when I do my speaking engagements. Community PIE is what I call it: partnerships, innovation, and empowerment. And I used my experience in Ferguson and just largely my experience as a police chief to really highlight like what that can look like and how much we're leaving on the table, if you will, by not leveraging our community as much as we should, because it's really about the foundation that you have before that critical incident arrives, just like the gentleman, the caller just stated. Mm-hmm. And what I find, the places where I see that law enforcement is more hesitant in doing that are places that have a complicated history, and it's more uncomfortable to go into those spaces.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to help them understand is if you really want to drive impact and you really want to help yourself and help your community, you have to be willing to separate yourself from your comfort zone.
Yes.
And the further you're willing to separate yourself from your comfort zone, that's where you will really start to see some of the results that are attached to doing the work, as you mentioned. And
I just want to say,
that's the only reason that
to do that, you don't have to be comfortable doing that. You just have to know that this is where we at now. We can't do anything about what happened 2 seconds ago, much less a day ago, a week ago, or last year. And just accept the fact that there's no way around doing what we have to do. We have to have difficult conversations and accept our part in that ecosystem and change. It's like a drug addict can never change if he never recognizes his circumstance of being a drug addict. And that's a kind of extreme example. But if you don't deal with your deficiencies, and what they say, courage is not the lack of fear. It's the moving forward in the face of fear and in uncomfortable situations.
So true. Thank you so much for calling in. Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree.
Okay, I'm going to let you go. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
And I want us to stay on this topic for a moment, if we can, Chief Armstrong, of walking into uncomfortable spaces and being able to lead in discomfort. And if it's okay with you, I would like to kind of do a radical shift to asking, how would you handle what is now a very uncomfortable situation that I think a lot of police chiefs are facing across the country with the presence of ICE in their communities and the different dynamics and discussions that are happening around deportation and ICE tactics in these communities, and whether or not local law enforcement should cooperate or should not cooperate with those operations. Do you mind talking to our listeners about that?
Sure. When it comes to ICE, there are a couple things that if I was a police chief currently and I was having to navigate this space. So one is being crystal clear in what you communicate to your community as far as what is the stance of the government entity. And when I say the government entity, the police department and the police chief or the local sheriff is often the face of what's going on in this place. But like when you're a police chief, you work for the city at large. So you either report to a city administrator, or you report to a public safety commission, or you report to a mayor or a mayor and council. So 100% of the decisions of things are not just on your shoulders for every single thing that goes in. And something like ICE, as we see, it is a highly political topic. And so you're going to be in community with the other leaders in the administration and quite frankly, the people that you answer to. The next thing that's going to play out. So what is, this city, this community, like, what is our stance on this? Because some communities, like, they want ICE there and they want them doing this because they subscribe to that. And so if that's the stance that your government is taking and you as the chief, that's what you have to get behind, then you need to be able to say that and communicate that. If you're taking a stance that there is no legal requirement for us to cooperate in these instances right here, you need to get out in the community and you need to be explaining that stuff to people in the community where they understand. But in addition to that, you also need to explain to the community like what your requirements are under your oath.
Yes.
Because that's a part that a lot of people in the community just really don't understand how that works. And as a sworn law enforcement official, you take an oath. And every state that I'm aware of has a statute, so i.e. has a law that a sworn official can be criminally charged if they do not, or if they intentionally violate the statute. And so there are things that we are bound by under our oath that we have to do. And just to try to put this in context for the listeners really quick. So if ICE is going on a raid in your community, then no, local law enforcement oftentimes is not mandated or required to go participate in that raid. So officers don't have to go out there and participate in stopping a car and pulling somebody out of the car and some of the things that we see happening on these videos. Now, if ICE does that, and as a result of them doing that, you have a group of people that start forming up, and then that situation is starting to creep into an unlawful assembly or a potential mob of violence or different things like that. And you, as the police department, the police chief, like, you are aware of that, and you refuse to go to address that could be looked at as a dereliction of duty, and that you cannot do. Yes. And that's where I really find is how local law enforcement is being pulled into this conversation and just put in the middle of a lot of this, because oftentimes they're not involved in the beginning parts of things. But then once ICE does, and then once the protesters or whoever comes out there, and then things start rising. And so now if you have an ICE official calls in, because at the end of the day, it's still an individual life that you're responsible for if it is in your community. And me as the police chief, I'm responsible for that. And so if an ICE agent calls in and says, hey, we're surrounded by angry protesters and they're getting violent towards us and all of those things, at that point, I no longer have the authority to say, well, we don't participate in that, because at that moment, it's not an ICE immigration issue. It's a safety of human life issue, and sanctity of life is always number one on our list of what we are responsible for. And so that is going to require a response from us. But what I think law enforcement leaders need to do is just get out in the community and just be very, open and honest with people in the community about what that looks like and what they should expect to see from them and what their role is and what their role isn't and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. Understanding ICE is going to be here for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
This is my community always.
Yes.
And so I need to make sure that I'm communicating and I'm laying that foundation so people understand where we stand on things and what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. It's not about what people want us to do and don't want us to do. Legally, we have obligations of things that we have to do, and understanding what that is, I want to communicate to people what they can expect to see from us and what that looks like, i.e. if you come out and you are involved in this and you're not adhering to orders, then you can be arrested or you can be cited, or these are the things, that we have to do because we always have to protect, human life and sanctity of life.
Exactly. And what you're describing is a decision framework that I referenced earlier. The way that you're analyzing things and you're saying we need to sit down, we need to decide what our priorities are, we need to decide what our legal obligations are, and then we need to message it accurately and clearly and consistently to our community. And then our actions and our strategies need to match what I communicated. Right. How do you advise that police chiefs come up with these types of decision frameworks? You talked about the community pie. Do you have other types of kind of decision-making strategies that you talk about? And I notice you have a book sitting behind you, so I would love for you to get a chance to plug it too, if this book that you wrote also talks on these topics.
Yes. So the title of my book is I'm Done Here, Create Lasting Impact by Leading with Intentionality. And it speaks directly to the question that you just asked, because when I look at things, when I look at issues or barriers or challenges that I have to navigate, I look at what do I want the end result to be?
Mm.
Like what is beneficial for everybody that is involved in this or that is a potential touch point in this? What does success look like at the end of this? So when I'm done here, whether I'm talking about me being in an organization or managing a critical incident, whatever the case may be, I start from what I want the end goal to be, and then I work my way back. And that's how I kind of put in the benchmarks of how am I going to navigate this issue. What I encourage all leaders to do is they have to, one, identify like what is foundational to them as an individual. Like who are they at their core? So in some of my trainings that I do this exercise to help people just identify and write down like what are their core values. Because one of the things that I think we have to look at differently in public safety by and large, most of the time when you join an organization, the organization already has their values. And so you are signing up that, all right, I will support these values. And that's great. But oftentimes those values do not 100% match up to you as an individual as far as what your core values are. And so we have to do a better job of helping people identify what their core values are. And the framework or the discussion around that needs to be, how do I support my agency's values through my core values? So when I talk to leaders about managing, the worst of the worst and different things like that, one, you have to identify what's core to you, because what's core to you is going to show up whether you want it to or not.
Yes.
On your good days and your bad days, who you are at your core is going to show up. My primary keynote is confidence under pressure, like what's in your cup. And we talk about whatever's in your cup is what's going to pour out when the pressure hits. So identifying what's core to you and then having guiding principles that you funnel decision-making through. So for me, if I'm having to manage a critical incident or navigating a critical incident, number one for me, my guiding principle is I want everybody to go home. It's as simple as that, is I want everybody to go home.
Safely,
I want all of my officers to go home. I want all the community members, anybody that is involved in this, I want everybody to go home. And so that's always going to be top of mind. So all the decisions that I make through that incident, is this helping everybody go home? That's one for me. My next one is, am I communicating with everybody? Thinking about communication. Internal communication is just as critical as external communication. And am I missing somebody? Am I missing a message here or a message there? And the third thing for me, And like I said, these are mine. If you go through the process of identifying what's core to you and knowing your community and what your community needs, this is how you develop your guiding principles for yourself. But third for me was to be flexible.
What do you mean by that?
I had to be flexible. So being the chief in Ferguson, especially being there when George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis, that set off round 2 of riots in Ferguson.
Yes.
And so riots in Ferguson is never or rarely going to be a one-day thing. You're talking sustained. And so having to live through that and experience, what I found is it is mentally agonizing to wake up in the morning and just be thinking about, man, how bad is it going to get tonight? Like all of that time, which is supposed to be your rest time, because you were there till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, fighting with rioters and just experiencing the worst of the worst that you can experience. And you're supposed to go home and rest because you're pretty confident that you got to come back and do the same thing all over again tonight.
Right.
But there is no mental rest in that space. And you're just thinking about like, oh man, like, is it going to be worse tonight? Like that is agonizing for people to have to do day after day after day after day.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about being flexible, like what I would do going into where I knew we were going to have a big protest and there probably was a likelihood that it was going to elevate to riots and damage and violence and all of those things, in making decisions in those spaces, I had to make sure that I was being flexible with how I made decisions, because what I found for me and my department and for that community, if I could be flexible and allow some things to happen, i.e., if I will allow tonight's events to go up to an 8 or a 9, but I felt pretty confident that this was all that they needed to get out of their system, then I may be flexible and allow more stuff to go on or be more tolerant, as opposed to being quicker to respond to try to quell things. And the thought process behind that is I just found that it was healthier for my department if we experience one night at a 9 as opposed to experiencing a 7, a 6, a 8, a 7, and a 5 over multiple days. Give me hell one night and let it be over with.
Right.
As opposed to the agony that you deal with when you are having to deal with that every day. And so for me, part of what my decision matrix had to be was, am I being flexible enough in my decision making?
Yes.
That it's going to help my people and the people that depend on me the most. Because when you're the leader, it's not about you.
Right. But what you're describing is so much deeper than just flexibility. This is also a very creative way to imagine a police response, and it takes you outside of a traditional law and order thought process where it's like, well, I'm the police chief. You can never get to 9 under my watch. Instead, you're
and that's the thing is you have to know what all comes with that.
Right.
And all right, now there were nights where I wish I would have pressed the button sooner. And when I don't, that's on me. And I have to own that and I have to live with that. But when I go back to, this was my process and this is what I was trying to accomplish by however I made my decisions in there, because it's rooted in this right here. And so it doesn't matter who I have to explain it to. I don't know who is listening to this right now, because it's never going to change how I talk about it. Is I can explain this to the world if I have to explain it to the world of what I was trying to do, what I was trying to accomplish. There were plenty of times where my officers were mad at me for what I allowed to happen or because I didn't take this stance. And oftentimes it's because, they didn't know or they didn't have all the information that I had at that moment, where this is not conducive to me being able to tell you in this moment. Like, I have to be flexible in this space, because I'm pretty confident if I'm flexible here, this will pay dividends for us. A real quick story. I know we're coming up on time and we're going to have to wrap real soon, but there was a protest that it wasn't scheduled or planned to come to the police department one day in Ferguson, but we were pretty confident that they were going to come there, and they did. And we had blocked off our front parking lot because in the aftermath of George Floyd, we had been attacked at the police department. They busted out all the windows of our building, tried to burn it down. So we were extra sensitive about protesters coming into the parking lot.
Right.
So we had a barrier, but there was another opening where you could just walk around and come in from the side. So when the protesters showed up to the PD that day, we had it blocked off. And so all of my officers are there. And so they walk around and they come into the parking lot from the side way that you could get in. So I go out there to meet them, to stop them, and to just remind them, hey, the parking lot is off limits. You can come out here. I'll let you protest in the street. The parking lot is off limits. And so, we had that back and forth. And, of course, they're there. They got the cameras in your face. They got to get the good quality content of the conflict with the police chief and all of those things. But the leader of the group, and I knew this individual. And so because we had been in community and we had built stuff, we had each other's cell phone numbers. And so we're out there, and so they have the bullhorn, and so me and my officers are there, and we're like, look, now y'all got to get off the property. Like, we're not playing this. So then he starts calling me out in front of everybody. Oh, the police chief has a great opportunity to de-escalate this situation, but we didn't touch his barricades. The other protesters, they would normally take them, which they would. They would take them, and we would have to go get them down the street afterwards. Like, we didn't do anything, so we came in peacefully, but he wanted to kick us out, and so he just all this grandstanding in front of everybody. So he's calling me out. But then as he's talking to other people are talking, he gets real close to me, and his back is turned, and he whispers, Chief, just let this ride. We're not going to be here long. And so he's trying to communicate, like, hey, like, we're not here for a fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're really just here for show.
Yeah.
But he put me on blast in front of everybody. That goes to my funnel of being flexible. Because it didn't matter that he put me on blast. Will my people be better served if I'm flexible in this moment and I can let them get what they need to get out of their system and leave? So I said, you know what? I said, man, I'm going to give y'all a chance. So I pulled my people back and we left, and we let them hold space in our parking lot right there. Mm-hmm. But then they ratcheted it up a notch, and then they start walking, making a loop through the parking lot. And my officers are looking at me like, man, we can't believe you letting them do this. Like, we set all this stuff up and we had this plan. Now you're diverting from the plan. Meanwhile, the leader is texting me, hey, Chief, I really appreciate you for stepping back. That made me look good. Yeah. And so I was pretty confident that, man, they're going to make this loop. They're going to get in their cars and they're going to leave. And so we're not having to stand out there on a skirmish line, and we're not being yelled at, having things thrown at us and all of that. And I was, it worked in that instance. And they were just there for show. They made one loop, they got in their cars, and then they left. If I wasn't flexible in that space, we would have had a conflict that day that could have been avoided.
That is.
And so when I talk about being flexible, like that's what it looks like in real life.
That's a great example, and it's really relevant for what New Orleans is going through, I think, very regularly. So thank you so much for giving it. And honestly, I'm so sad to have to end this conversation because this has been so wonderful for us to hear as monitors, but I think it's been really valuable and applicable to everything that we're experiencing here in New Orleans. I sincerely want to thank you, Chief Armstrong, for coming on the show. And again, do you mind just really quickly saying the name of your book one more time for our listeners?
I'm Done Here. Create lasting impact by leading with intentionality. So anybody's interested in the book or seeing, what I do now in the consulting space and the work that I do, you can just go to jasonparmstrong.com. And read all about what I do and what I offer.
Thank you so much for coming on this show today. I honestly thank you.
Thank you. And again, that website was jasonparmstrong.com, where you can find information about Chief Armstrong and his book on there. And that wraps up today's episode of The Monitor's Mic. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and staying engaged with the crucial conversations we're having about police, oversight, and community safety. Before we close, I want to remind everyone about OIPM's 24/7 hotline. It's operational every day of the year, and you can call or text 1-877-225-6476. The hotline is available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, and you can also file through our website at www.nolaipm.gov. Until next time, stay informed, stay involved, and stay committed to building a safer community. And this has been The Monitor's Mic. Thank you.